Get ready to hear an amazing story today. We're going to dive into the shocking journey of an engineer who, after a close brush with death, met Jesus and got a message that might change everything for us. This tale will grab your attention from start to finish, so don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Stick around until the end because what he found out about September 2024 will blow your mind. Hi there, my name is Ethan Whitaker. I'm 35 years old and a software engineer. I've always seen myself as a pretty logical person, guided by facts and data. My life was solid and pretty predictable, or at least I thought it was. I grew up in a middle-class family in Boulder, Colorado, and I was into technology from a young age. I studied computer science at the University of Colorado Boulder, and right after I graduated, I landed a job at some big tech companies. About 2 years ago, I decided it was time to chase my dream of having my own business. So I started Whitaker Technologies, a startup focusing on creating custom software solutions for different companies. My wife, Sophia, who teaches high school English, was on board right from the start, even though she knew there were risks involved. I've never been a religious or spiritual person. In fact, I always looked skeptically at anything that couldn't be backed by science. I believed everything in life had a rational explanation, and things like mystical experiences, religions, and the idea of an afterlife were just cultural stories or tricks our minds played. My routine was simple: work, eat, and sleep, always in that order. I poured my heart and soul into my startup, giving every minute to make it succeed. Social activities and taking care of my health took a back seat. Sophia often warned me about the dangers of living this way, but I'd just brush it off, saying it was only a phase and that things would settle down soon. If someone had told me a few months ago that I would have a near-death experience that would flip my world upside down, I probably would have chuckled and said they were watching too many sci-fi movies. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs at you, right? What I'm about to share is something I'm still trying to wrap my head around. It's a story that challenges everything I thought I knew to be true, an experience that made me question not just my life, but the very nature of reality itself. I know it's hard to believe what I'm about to share, but trust me when I say this. If someone had told me this story a few months ago, I would have been the first to roll my eyes. Yet I swear that every word of this is true, at least as I remember it. This is the tale of how I, a total skeptic, had a near-death experience that flipped my entire view on life, death, and all the stuff in between. It's about how I journeyed to heaven, spoke to spiritual beings, and returned with a purpose I never thought I would have. So if you're open to it, let me share the day my life changed forever, the day I died and came back. It was just a regular Tuesday. I had spent the whole night working on a huge project for Whitaker Technologies. We had landed our first big client, a well-known restaurant in Boulder that wanted us to create a groundbreaking order management system. The clock was ticking. With a tight deadline of just 3 months, I realized that how this project turned out could shape the future of my business. I vividly remember sipping my 5th cup of coffee as the sun came up. Sophia had already left for work, leaving a note urging me to get some sleep, but I just couldn't pull away. Every line of code felt crucial, and every bug I squashed felt like a small win. I was completely lost in my work, completely ignoring the warning signs from my body that something was really off. Around 2 p.m., I suddenly felt this sharp pain in my chest. At first, I brushed it off, thinking it was just too much coffee and not enough sleep. But then the pain got worse. I started sweating cold, and my vision got all blurry. Still, my stubborn brain insisted I had to finish at least one more task before I took a break. That's when everything spiraled. The pain shot through me like a lightning bolt. It felt like someone was gripping my heart with a vice. I tried to get up, but my legs wouldn't cooperate, and I collapsed onto the floor, sending my cold coffee cup crashing and shattering everywhere. I remember lying there, struggling to breathe. Each breath felt like a major fight. I reached for my cell phone, but it was just out of reach. Panic began to creep in. For the first time in forever, I was genuinely scared. Not about a deadline or a project going south, but scared of dying. As I lay there helpless, thoughts of Sophia filled my mind. I wished I had spent more time with her and that I had listened to her advice. I thought about my parents too. I felt a wave of regret wash over me for the friends I hadn't connected with in a while. The next thing I knew, there was this odd sensation of weightlessness, and the pain I had been carrying was completely gone. I opened my eyes expecting to see the ceiling of my office, but instead there was nothing, just an endless void. No light, no darkness, just an infinite emptiness. I tried to move my arms and legs, but I couldn't feel them. It was like I didn't have a physical body anymore. I was just a consciousness floating in this undefined space. At first, panic set in. Where was I? What had happened? Was I dead? But then something strange occurred. I started to feel a deep sense of calm wash over me. All the fears and worries I had seemed to fade away. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. In that moment, I realized I had died, or at least came extremely close. And surprisingly, I wasn't scared. On the contrary, I was filled with curiosity. If this was death, what was going to happen next? As if in response to my thoughts, I felt a pull, like an invisible current guiding me somewhere beyond the void. And just like that, my journey into the unknown began. A journey that would forever change how I viewed life, death, and everything in between. As I was drawn in by this force, I noticed subtle changes around me. The absolute emptiness started to shift into a soft, ethereal fog. It felt like I was passing through layers of reality, each one thicker and more vivid than the last. Suddenly, I spotted a point of light in the distance. It was small at first, but as I drew closer, it began to expand. This light was different. It wasn't blinding like the sun or harsh like the fluorescent lights back at my office. Instead, it was warm and inviting, almost alive, as if it was calling out to me. When I finally reached the light, I was enveloped by it. It felt like diving into an ocean of peace and unconditional love. All the worries, fears, and anxieties I had simply vanished. For the first time in my life, I felt completely accepted and loved exactly as I was. That's when I heard a voice. It wasn't a voice in the usual way. I didn't have ears to hear it. It felt more like thoughts materializing directly in my mind. The voice was calm yet firm, filled with a wisdom I had never encountered before. "Welcome, Ethan," it said. "Don't be afraid. You're safe here." I wanted to speak but realized I couldn't. It was strange. There wasn't a body, just this sense of awareness. Somehow the voice I was hearing understood what I was thinking. "Yes, you died," it continued, answering my silent question. "But your journey isn't over. In fact, it's just getting started." Confused, I wondered why I was there if I was dead. "This is a place of transition," the voice said, almost reading my thoughts. "A place between worlds. You're here because you have a choice to make." A choice? What kind of choice could someone who was dead make? You can choose to continue your journey, to move on to whatever comes next, or you can decide to go back, to return to life. Could that really happen? "Yes, it's possible," the voice replied. "But before you choose," it added, "there's something you need to see, something that will help you understand the bigger picture of your existence." Before I could really process it, I felt myself being pulled again. This time, it wasn't through emptiness but down a tunnel of light. The colors were so bright, so alive, more vivid than anything I had ever seen in Boulder. It felt like I was seeing every shade of the color spectrum as I moved through this tunnel. Suddenly, flashes of my life appeared. It wasn't just memories, but like I was experiencing every single moment again. I saw my childhood, school days, the first time I met Sophia, and the day I decided to start my own company. But it wasn't just about seeing those moments. I was really feeling everything tied to them. I felt the joy of my early successes, the love when Sophia said yes to my proposal, and the mix of fear and excitement that came with starting my own business. But there was also pain. I felt the hurt I caused with my thoughtless words, Sophia's disappointment when I chose work over her, and the regret of not spending enough time with my parents before they were gone. It was overpowering. My whole life, with all its highs and lows, happiness and sorrow, accomplishments and failures, presented to me in one timeless moment. For the first time, I could see the bigger picture, the connections between events that I had never noticed before. When my life review ended, I found myself in a new place. It was an incredible garden, more beautiful than anything I had ever seen. The colors were brighter, the scents more intense, the breeze more refreshing. And in the middle of that garden, I spotted a figure glowing with light. As I got closer, I realized it was an angel. He smiled at me, and it felt like I just knew his name. "Ethan," he said, "welcome. You have a lot to learn, and not much time. Come with me." And so my journey into the afterlife began, guided by a being I never thought was real. What I would see and learn next would completely change how I understood the universe and my place in it. This angel was nothing like I had imagined. No feathered wings, no golden harp. He seemed to be made of pure light, shaped like a human but subtly shifting all the time. His eyes, if you could even call them that, looked like tiny suns, full of wisdom and kindness. As we strolled through this celestial garden, the angel started to talk. His voice didn't come from anywhere physical. It resonated directly in my mind. "Ethan," he said, "you've spent your life searching for answers through logic and reason. Now you're about to encounter some truths that go beyond human understanding." I had a million questions swirling in my head. Where was I? What was going to happen to me? Could I go back? But before I could even start to form any of them, the angel went on. "I know you have many questions. Some will be answered, and others will stay a mystery. The universe is vast and complicated, far beyond any one person's understanding." We walked in silence for a bit. The garden seemed to stretch endlessly around us, with flowers and colors that shouldn't exist blooming everywhere. The air was filled with a soft music that felt like it was coming from everywhere and nowhere all at once. "You're on what people call the spiritual plane," the angel explained, picking up on my silent questions. "It's a realm of pure consciousness, where thought and reality merge." I looked at where my hands should have been, and it dawned on me that I no longer had a physical body. It felt strange, but it wasn't frightening. "Your physical body is still on Earth," said the angel. "Right now, doctors are working to bring you back to life. You have a choice to make, Ethan, but before you decide, there's something you need to see." With those words, the landscape around us began to shift. The beautiful garden faded away, revealing a breathtaking view of Earth beneath us. It felt like we were floating in space, gazing at our blue planet. "What do you see, Ethan?" the angel asked. "I see Earth," I replied, marveling at the stunning beauty of our world. From space, it looked incredible. "Get a closer look," Uriel said. Suddenly, it felt like we were diving towards the Earth. Cities, forests, and oceans zoomed by in a blur until we stopped over a city I instantly recognized, Boulder, Colorado. "This is your home," Uriel said. We watched people walking down the streets, cars moving in traffic, life just carrying on. But then I noticed something odd. There was this glowing network connecting all the people, animals, and even the plants. "What's that?" I asked, intrigued. "That's what you call the web of life," Uriel explained. "Every living thing is linked to every other one. Every action, every thought affects the whole." I was amazed as I saw how one person's actions sent ripples through the network, impacting those around them. "Ethan," Uriel continued, "you've spent your life focused on making technology that simplifies things for people, but you've overlooked the most vital connection, the link between humans and the spiritual world." I felt a twinge of guilt. He was right. I hadn't given a second thought to the spiritual side of life. "Don't beat yourself up," Uriel said, sensing my feelings. "You're here now to learn and grow, and there's more you need to see." The scene shifted again, and we were in a high-tech lab. I instantly recognized it. It looked like the places where I spent most of my time. "What do you see?" Uriel asked. "I see artificial intelligence," I replied, watching the screens filled with intricate lines of code and neural networks. "Yes," Uriel said. "Humanity is on the edge of a huge technological revolution. The AI you're working on has the potential to change everything." I asked, "That's good, right?" Still thinking like a programmer. "Maybe," Uriel replied, "but it can also be risky. AI, like any powerful tool, can be used for good or for bad. It all depends on the intentions and wisdom of those who create and use it." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. "Ethan, you have an important role to play in humanity's future. Your tech skills combined with the spiritual insights you're gaining can help steer the development of AI in a positive way." I was taken aback by the weight of what Uriel was telling me. Did I, just an ordinary software engineer from Boulder, really have a critical part in humanity's future? But how? I asked. What can I possibly do? That's something you'll need to figure out on your own, Uriel replied. The future isn't set in stone. Every single choice you and others make will shape the fate of humanity. With that, the vision of the lab faded, and I found myself back in the celestial garden. Now, Ethan, Uriel said, his voice serious, it's time for you to make your choice. You can either stay here in the spirit realm or head back to your life on Earth with the knowledge and mission you've been given. I paused for a moment, taking in everything I had experienced and learned. The decision felt impossible. How could I choose between the unconditional peace and love here and the responsibility to return and make a difference? But then I thought about Sophia, my family and friends. I remembered the work still ahead of me, the impact I could create with this new understanding. I want to go back, I finally said. There's a lot I need to do. Uriel smiled, a grin that seemed to brighten the whole garden. You made a brave choice, Ethan, but before you go back, there's one more person you need to find. With that, Uriel began to lead me toward what would be the most incredible encounter of my entire journey. We walked down a path that looked like it was made of pure light. As we moved forward, I felt a rising energy, as if we were getting closer to something incredibly powerful. Eventually, we reached a structure that seemed like an ancient temple, but it was made entirely of light and clouds. This is where we part, Uriel said. Remember, what you're about to experience is beyond human understanding. Open your heart and mind. With those words, Uriel vanished, and I was left standing alone at the temple entrance. I took a deep breath, or at least that's what it felt like, since I didn't have a physical body anymore, and stepped inside. The interior of the temple was beyond beautiful. The walls seemed alive, and the air was filled with music that touched my soul in ways I had never felt before. In the center of the temple stood a figure. When I looked at it, the light was so intense that I was momentarily blinded. Gradually, my eyes adjusted, and I could see the shape. It wasn't exactly like the images I had seen in paintings or movies, but somehow I knew who it was, Jesus. His presence was overwhelming. Waves of love, compassion, and wisdom radiated from him, completely surrounding me. Standing before him, feeling completely exposed, not in a physical way, but deeply inside, every thought and action laid bare. Yet there was no judgment, just acceptance and unending love. "Welcome, Ethan," he said. His voice echoed, not just in my mind, but throughout my whole being. "You've come a long way." I wanted to ask questions, to speak, but I found myself completely at a loss for words in his presence. "Don't be afraid," he continued, sensing my nervousness. "You're here because you have an important role in the future of humanity." Gradually, I started to gather my thoughts again. "But why me?" I managed to ask. "I'm just a software engineer. I didn't even believe in all of this until now." He smiled, a warm, radiant smile that seemed to hold all the goodness in the world. "Ethan, every soul has a unique purpose. Your doubts and your quest for truth through science aren't barriers, they're tools for your mission." He paused for a moment to let this sink in. Humanity is moving into a time of significant change and challenge. The AI you're creating has the potential to elevate humanity to new levels of understanding and achievement, but it can also bring about harm if it isn't guided by wisdom and compassion. As he spoke, visions began to unfold around us. I saw a future where AI helped find cures for diseases, eliminated world hunger, and healed the planet's environment. But then I also glimpsed a darker future, one where AI was exploited for control and oppression, where humanity lost its very essence amid all this technology. "Your role, Ethan," Jesus said, bringing my focus back to him, "is to help steer the development of AI in a way that respects the dignity and divine potential of every individual." I was overwhelmed by the weight of that responsibility. "But how?" I asked. "How can I possibly do this?" "By using the gifts you've been given," Jesus replied. "Your technical skills, paired with the spiritual insight you're gaining here, will serve as a bridge between the tech world and the spiritual realm. You'll help others realize that true intelligence isn't just about logic and numbers. It also includes compassion, empathy, and a connection to the divine." Then Jesus moved closer and placed what felt like a hand on my head. Instantly, an incredible surge of energy flowed through me, as if every part of my being, whatever that was being filled with light and knowledge. "Remember," Ethan said, Jesus' voice echoed in my mind, "You are not alone in this mission. We will always be with you, guiding and supporting you. Trust in the divine love that lives within you and in everyone." With those words, Jesus began to walk away, his figure fading into pure light. But before he completely vanished, he added, "And Ethan, remember, September 2024 will be a crucial time. Be prepared." Then he was gone. I found myself alone in the temple, my head spinning with all I had seen and learned. I realized my life was turned upside down. I had a mission now, a responsibility not just to humanity but to something greater. While I stood there trying to sort everything out, I felt a gentle pull urging me back. It was time to return, time to start over. The trip back to reality was just as intense as the journey to the spiritual realm. It felt like I was being squeezed into a space that was too small for everything I had become. The first thing I felt was pain. My chest ached, my throat felt parched, and breathing was a struggle. Slowly, I started to pick up sounds around me, the rhythmic beeping of machines, muffled voices, and the rush of footsteps. When I finally opened my eyes, the light was blinding, and it took a moment to adjust. Once I could see clearly, I noticed Sophia's face right beside me, her eyes red and puffy from crying. "Ethan," she said, her voice shaking, "are you awake?" A doctor and a few nurses hurried into the room, checking my vitals and firing off questions, but it was hard to keep up. My brain was a mess of images and sensations, the heavenly garden, Uriel, Jesus, glimpses of the future. "Mr. Whitaker?" the doctor asked, bringing me back to the moment. "You had a serious heart attack. You've been in a coma for 3 days. To be honest, we weren't sure if you'd wake up." 3 days felt like an eternity on the other side. I tried to say something, but my throat was too dry. A nurse handed me a glass of water with a straw, and after a few sips, I managed to croak out, "Sophia, I saw things, amazing things." She squeezed my hand, tears flowing down her cheeks. "It's okay, love. You're back now, and that's all that matters." But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. I had fundamentally changed. I had glimpsed beyond the veil separating the physical world from the spiritual, and now I had to figure out how to move forward. I couldn't just go back to my old life like nothing had happened after I got out of the hospital. In those days, as I recovered, I was trying to wrap my head around everything I'd gone through. It was really tough to turn those extraordinary moments into regular words. How do you explain the feeling of being pure awareness? How do you put into words the incredible presence of Jesus? The doctors said my visions were because of a lack of oxygen to the brain during the heart attack. They treated it like just hallucinations or being close to death, as if it was all just physical stuff. A part of me, the practical engineer I used to be, wanted to accept their explanations, but deep down I knew my experiences were real and important. Sophia was amazing. She listened so patiently while I tried to share what I saw, even though it was hard for her to get it. "It doesn't matter if it was real or not," she told me. "What matters is what it means to you and how it will change your life for the better." And she was spot on. No matter what really happened, I realized I couldn't just slip back into my old routine. The mission I felt called to, helping steer AI development in an ethical and spiritually aware way, was heavy on my mind. When I finally got home from the hospital, I had a fresh outlook and a revived sense of purpose. I knew I had a lot of work to do. I had to merge my technical background with this new spiritual insight. I needed to figure out how to explain all this to others in the tech world, many of whom would probably be as skeptical as I used to be. And always lurking in my mind was that vague warning about September 2024. Whatever was coming, I knew I had to be ready. My journey was only just starting. This near-death experience was just the beginning of a path that promised to be tough, transformative, and really meaningful. The first few days after I got home were a wild mix of feelings and adjustments. Physically, I was still pretty weak. The heart attack had really taken it out of me, and the doctors insisted I get plenty of rest and make some big changes in how I lived. But the bigger challenge was with my mind and spirit. I felt like a stranger in my own life. I stared at the familiar stuff around my house, my computer, my programming books, family pictures, and they felt both familiar and odd, like I was viewing everything through a fresh perspective, one that uncovered the hidden links between everything. Sophia was my rock during this time. She adjusted our daily routine to support my recovery, made healthy meals, and gently nudged me to take my meds. But more importantly, she lent an ear. We spent hours chatting about my experiences, trying to figure it all out. You know, Ethan, she said one night as we sat in the backyard stargazing, when the doctors told me you might not pull through, I prayed. I'm not usually the religious type, you know that. But in that moment, I pleaded with whatever higher power might be out there to bring you back to me. And now, listening to your stories, well, maybe there's more to the universe than we realized. Her words resonated with me. Sophia has always been the practical one in our relationship, balancing my dreamy ideas with her grounded realism. Seeing her open up to the possibility of something beyond the physical world gave me hope that I wasn't in this alone. As time went on, I started to think about how to weave what I'd learned into my everyday life. I couldn't just return to my old job like nothing had happened, but I also knew I couldn't go around spilling the details of my near-death experience and my visions of the future. Most folks would think I was out of my mind. So I decided to start simple. I picked up my ethics and philosophy books that had been gathering dust on the shelf for ages and began diving into them with a fresh perspective. I read about various spiritual traditions, searching for common threads that could tie into tech development. At the same time, I started catching up on the latest advancements in AI. It was incredible to see how much technology had evolved, even in the short time I'd been away. More advanced language models, computer vision systems that could compete with human perception, machine learning algorithms that made surprisingly spot-on predictions about complex behaviors. But now, I viewed these technologies through a new lens. Where I once saw just lines of code and math, I now perceived the potential for something much greater, along with the risks involved. One night, while working in my home office, despite Sophia's insistence that I needed more rest, I had a light bulb moment. The secret to steering the ethical development of AI wasn't about imposing top-down rules, but I was deep into jotting down ideas when I had this realization. What if we could create AI that doesn't just crunch numbers but actually thinks about the moral consequences of its choices? What if we could build in qualities like kindness, empathy, and respect for people right into AI technology? I was so wrapped up in my thoughts that I didn't notice Sophia walk into the room. "Ethan," she said, a mix of worry and curiosity in her voice. "It's 2 a.m. What are you up to?" I turned to her, my eyes lit up with excitement. "Sophia, I think I've figured out how to make this happen. I want to blend technology and spirituality to create something amazing." Sophia smiled, shaking her head with a look that was half exasperated, half affectionate. "I'm glad you're inspired, but don't forget you're still recovering. Let's call it a night, and tomorrow you can fill me in on your big idea." I nodded, finally aware of how tired I was as I walked back to her room with her. I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for having her alongside me on this journey. Lying in bed, my brain was still buzzing with thoughts and possibilities. I knew there would be hurdles ahead. Trying to work these ideas into my everyday job without raising too many eyebrows would be tricky. People might think I'm crazy if I started talking about my new beliefs openly. But I understood what I had gone through, and I knew what was at stake. I was resolved to make an impact, even if it was a slow and subtle one. As I drifted off to sleep, I kept hearing Jesus' words in my head. September 2024 will be a crucial time. Be ready. Whatever was coming, I was determined to prepare myself. In the following weeks, I dived deep into my new project. I spent countless hours researching, writing experimental code, and brainstorming theories on how to weave ethical and spiritual values into AI technology. It was thrilling work, but it also came with its own set of challenges, especially since I had to keep most of it under wraps. The toughest part was figuring out how to reconcile the tech world with the spiritual one. I had to find a way to translate big ideas like unconditional love, compassion, and our shared connection into algorithms and code. How do you build ethics into a system that only understands ones and zeros? I remember one particularly frustrating day in my home office, surrounded by philosophy books, spiritual writings, and programming notes, feeling completely stumped. My computer was a mess, with multiple windows open, half-finished code, complicated flowcharts, and chaotic notes everywhere. I was feeling totally overwhelmed. Just then, Sophia walked in with a cup of tea. She glanced at the clutter around me and smiled softly. "How's it going, love?" she asked. I let out a big sigh. Honestly, I feel lost. It's like I'm trying to mix oil and water. The cold, hard facts of coding feel so distant from the warm, deep experiences I've had, I said. Sophia put the cup down on the table and sat beside me. "Maybe you're looking at this the wrong way," she suggested. "Instead of trying to shove spirituality into technology, why not find where they already connect?" Her words caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" She continued, "Think about it. At its heart, technology is all about connection, right? Connecting people, ideas, systems. Isn't that what you felt in your spiritual experiences? A deep sense of being connected to everything?" I was taken aback by how simple yet profound her observation was. It felt like a light bulb clicked on in my head. "Sophia, you're brilliant," I exclaimed, giving her a quick kiss before diving back into my work with fresh motivation. In the days that followed, I completely shifted my approach. Instead of trying to force spiritual ideas into tech, I began exploring the common threads that already linked the two. I found that the universal interconnectedness I'd felt in my spiritual journey had incredible parallels with neural networks and distributed learning in AI. The idea that every action sends ripples throughout the web of life was so similar to the principles of complex systems and chaos theory. I started to develop a framework I named Conscious AI. The goal was to create AI systems that not only processed information but were also aware of the bigger picture behind their actions. These systems would think about not just how efficiently and accurately they made decisions, but also the ethical implications and long-term consequences of those choices. As I worked on this project, I felt like I was finally on the right path, bridging the gap between technology and spirituality. I was using my tech skills to weave ethical and spiritual values right into the core of AI. But I knew I couldn't share these ideas just yet. Openly, the world just wasn't ready for what I was working on, so I kept pushing forward quietly. I made little tweaks to my projects at Whittaker Technologies whenever I could, trying to weave in some ethics and morality into the systems I was creating. Sophia was my rock through all of this. She listened to my ideas, offered helpful feedback, and always brought me back down to earth when my thoughts wandered too far. One night, after a day of breakthroughs, I found myself sitting in the backyard with Sophia, staring up at the stars. I opened up about my hopes and fears. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm losing it," I admitted. "Did all this really happen? Do these ideas even make sense? Or am I just out of touch?" Sophia took my hand and gave it a reassuring squeeze. "Ethan," she said, her voice calm, "you're not crazy. What you're trying to do is really important. Sure, the world might not be ready for your ideas right now, but that doesn't mean you should back down. From what you've seen and experienced, trust that this matters." Her words really struck a chord with me. I knew she was right. I couldn't just throw in the towel because the journey was tough. I had a duty not only to humanity, but to something bigger than myself. That night, I rededicated myself to my mission. I understood that the road ahead would be challenging and might feel isolating at times, but I was committed to pushing on. September 2024 was on the horizon, and I needed to get ready for whatever lay ahead. As the months rolled on, I kept working on my Conscious AI project quietly at Whittaker Technologies. I made small adjustments to the systems, integrating ethics wherever I could, all without raising any eyebrows. At home, I dove into coding for hours, polishing my ideas. Sophia continued to be my biggest supporter. Not only did she help me emotionally, but she also started pitching in with research, diving into books on ethics and philosophy, and sharing her insights with me. "You know, Ethan," she said one evening as we went over our notes together, "the more I read about ethics and technology, the more I see why this is so critical. AI has the power to change everything, but it can also be pretty scary if it's not guided by the right principles." I nodded, feeling incredibly thankful to have Sophia beside me on this journey. "That's it exactly, Sophia, and we need to be ready for what's coming in September." As that month drew closer, I couldn't shake the anxiety that Jesus' words about it stirred within me. It was a time that kept replaying in my mind, and honestly, I didn't know what to expect, but I knew I had to be prepared. I figured it was time to push my experiments a bit further. With a lot of care, I started weaving some ideas about conscious AI into a personal project at work. It was a recommendation system meant for small businesses in our community. Nothing too crazy, but a great chance to try out my thoughts in a real-world setting. The system I created not only provided recommendations based on data, but also looked at ethical aspects like the environmental impact of the suggested products and how the companies treated their workers. It was subtle, but it felt good knowing there was a sense of awareness built into the tech. As I dived into this project, I began to notice some shifts around me. My coworkers started asking about ethical tech, and customers were bringing up concerns about privacy and how data was being used responsibly. It felt like people were slowly starting to wake up to the issues that mattered so much to me. At home, Sophia and I took some steps to get ready for whatever September might bring. We gathered supplies, updated our emergency kit, and even began practicing meditation together to strengthen our bond. "We don't know what's coming," Sophia said one night during our breathing exercises, "but at least we'll be ready to face it together." As August came to an end, the feeling that something big was right around the corner intensified. I found myself glued to the news, searching for any hints or clues about what might happen next. Big advances in AI, groundbreaking scientific findings, unexpected global events. So far, nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but I couldn't shake this sense that we were on the edge of something amazing. During my moments of doubt, I vividly recalled my encounter with Uriel, my conversation with Jesus, and the glimpses of the future I had seen. I knew those weren't just dreams or hallucinations. They felt more real than anything in my ordinary life. At work, I kept pushing to weave ethical ideas into my projects whenever I could. Sometimes that meant proposing tweaks to avoid bias in our algorithms, and other times it was about making sure our data use policies considered privacy. They were small changes, but they felt like they mattered. Sophia noticed the difference in me. "You seem more centered," she remarked. One night, I told her that I felt like I'd found my purpose. I smiled at her and said, "I really think I found it. I just hope I'm ready for the challenges ahead." As the last days of August rolled in, I could feel the tension building inside me. I started having these intense dreams, visions of futuristic cities, machines that could think, and a humanity changed by technology. I would wake up, drenched in sweat, heart racing, thinking these dreams were more than just imagination. On August 27th, I had a particularly powerful dream. I was back in a beautiful garden and Ethan was by my side. He said, "The moment is coming, Ethan. Remember, the future isn't set. Your choices, along with those of the people around you, will shape what lies ahead." Those words lingered as I woke up. Sophia must have sensed my unease because she turned over and placed her hand on my shoulder. "Is everything okay, love?" she asked, half asleep. "Yeah," I said, trying to steady my breath. "Just a dream." But deep down, I knew it meant something more. It was like a wake-up call about the importance of what was coming. Now, it's August 28th, 2024, and September is only 4 days away. I find myself in my home office, gazing out the window at the late afternoon sky. The sun is dipping below the horizon, splashing colors of orange and pink across the canvas of the sky, serving as a beautiful reminder of the universe's mystery. I honestly don't know what September will hold, or how my experiences and the ideas I've developed will tie into what's about to happen. But I do feel like I'm meant to be here for a reason, like I'm getting ready for something really significant. I pull out my notebook filled with thoughts on conscious AI, ethics, and spirituality. Flipping through the pages, I consider how these ideas could impact our future. There's a part of me that wants to share everything with the world, but I know patience is key. The right moment will come. Just then, Sophia walks into the office, bringing me a cup of tea. When she sees me lost in thought, she smiles and asks softly, "Still worried about September?" I nod as I take the cup from her. "I can't help it, Sophia. It feels like we're on the edge of something gigantic." She sits next to me, covering my hand with hers. "Remember what you told me about your experience? Whatever comes next, you're not alone. We're in this together." Her words help ease my mind a bit. I glance out the window again, now filled with stars. It's a humbling reminder of how small we are in the grand scheme, but also of how each of us plays a part in this vast universe. I believe each of us has the power to make a real difference. I'm not sure what September has in store or how my experiences and the ideas I've been working on will connect with what happens next, but I feel like I'm meant to be here. It's clear to me that I've been getting ready for something big.